Welcome. I'm delighted to see so many people here taking time out of your busy schedules to take steps to improve your health. I am naturopathic Dr. Kate Rayom. I am a author and former faculty member at the Canadian College of Naturopathic Medicine, author of this book, Vitamin K2 and the Calcium Paradox, How a Little Known Vitamin Could Save Your Life. And we are here to talk about a topic that is sort of, it's always timely: energy, vitality, longevity, how we can live as well as possible, as long as possible, helping to understand why things change with age, why we tend to lose energy, and as well the aging process itself. We're going to touch on all of these things. So, feel free to, if you have burning questions, you can type them into the chat area and I will do my best to answer those as we go along. And if I have a chance, I might be able to see those questions as we go along, or save them to the end might be easier. Okay. And why is that stopped moving? There we go. Okay, so we're talking about energy, vitality, cellular renewal, and I know that people are here for different reasons. I know people are interested in this topic, some more so about how to age better, longevity medicine, for example, others more so about energy. We're going to talk about these things. First of all, I want to sort of give a broad context to the information I'm going to share with you, to give a framework to understand the types of steps that we're going to take in terms of lifestyle, nutrition, specific nutrients, targeted nutrients, and nutritional support for energy and longevity and cellular vitality. So we're going to talk about what drives the aging process, because that helps us understand these concepts, as well as specifically we're going to talk about mitochondria. You've probably heard a little bit about these lately because there's a lot of buzz around mitochondrial health, and for good reason. We'll talk about how these are involved in energy and longevity, and then we will talk about, again, lifestyle tips, practices, nutrition, and natural health products for mitochondrial health and longevity. I'm losing my light faster than I expected, so let me just turn on a little bit of light here. Okay. So let's talk about the aging process and exactly what aging is, because as I said, that will help give us a framework for what we're doing, how to approach or think about the information that I'll be presenting to you. So the most functional definition of aging that we have is a time-dependent accumulation of cellular damage. So think about that for a moment. There's the time aspect. We can't do a lot about how quickly time proceeds. The days are 24 hours and they just keep marching on. But then there's this concept of time-dependent accumulation of cellular damage. So thinking about aging in this way, thinking about changes in our health in this way, helps us develop new goals for health and for aging well, for living well at any age, longevity medicine. And this does apply even if you're younger, to people at any age. And I'll talk about the effects of stress, for example, and types of things that accelerate this damage. So our new goals for health and longevity, keeping this in mind, is to, one, minimize cellular damage. We'll talk about that. And two, maximize cellular repair. Because like I said, there's not a lot we can do about the time part of this equation, but we can minimize the amount of cellular damage that's being done and maximize the amount of cellular repair that's happening. So if you keep these things in mind, pretty much everything I talk about over the next 45 minutes or so will target one of or both of these two steps: minimizing cellular damage, maximizing cellular repair. And this ultimately provides a really helpful framework for improving energy and vitality. Okay, so a lot of this circles back to the mitochondria, which I know is a topic, like I said, you've probably heard a lot about, real buzz around mitochondria for good reason. And the mitochondria, this is this sort of like bean-shaped organelle that you'll find inside your cells. I'm sure you've heard about these lately. Mitochondria are energy producing centers. This is a very fancy looking schematic of a cell. This big purple part here is the nucleus. That's where our main cellular DNA is. There's a lot of different organelles, all these like layers around here is because that this, the nucleus makes different proteins and those are pumped out of a cell. But all of this in every single cell of the body requires energy. Where does that come from? Well, it comes from the mitochondria, these bean-shaped organelles, and they have these folded membranes inside of them. Every single cell of the body, well, almost every single one, fun fact, red blood cells don't have these, but every other cell in the body does need energy. We need energy to think and move and breathe and digest and you name it. And where does that come from? We talk about energy in our food, but we don't get directly energy from our food. That energy that's stored like calories in your food needs to be converted to cellular energy, which is called ATP. And that comes from these mitochondria. You can think of mitochondria as batteries, engines, powerhouses. These are all great analogies, and I will use them interchangeably at different times. But thinking of the mitochondria as batteries is quite helpful because batteries wear down, batteries need to be replaced, batteries can have different strengths. So that's helpful when it comes to mitochondria. Now, in these types of schematics, for simplicity's sake, you usually see a few mitochondria. In fact, an average cell has 2,000 or more, 2,500 mitochondria in an average cell. A very metabolically active cell will have like a heart muscle that's always beating, or a brain cell that's always thinking, for example, or doing something even while you're sleeping. Those cells can have 100,000 mitochondria in a single cell. We have a roughly 4 quadrillion mitochondria in our bodies. It's kind of a mind-boggling number, but it's true. So we have a lot of these, which speaks to their importance. Interestingly, mitochondria have their own DNA. So we inherit the cellular DNA, the nuclear DNA that's in the middle of the cell. We inherit that from both mom and dad. But the DNA in the mitochondria, it's separated because it's prone to being damaged. Actually, it's a separate DNA that we only inherit from our moms. So that's kind of interesting information. So these are the mitochondria, and these are what are producing energy. And in some cases, and certainly when it comes to age-related fatigue or reductions in energy, a lot of that relates to mitochondrial function. Now, there's lots of reasons that we can be losing energy. And I'd like to say for anybody, a lot of us haven't seen our doctors, for example, in the last 3 years for a checkup. And if you haven't and you're feeling tired, it's worth going for a checkup to check for things like iron levels, thyroid levels, B12, and other simple things that you can check for that may be affecting your energy or causing fatigue. Once you get the all clear on that, then and you're still not feeling as well as you think you should be, then it's time to focus on mitochondrial support. So we're going to look at this. So, excuse me, I said 4 quadrillion, but I meant 10 quadrillion mitochondria in an average adult human. Like I said, active cells have 100,000 of them. The lifespan of a mitochondria averages around 100 days. So because there's energy being produced here, electrons are bouncing around, damage is being done. Free radicals are being generated in our mitochondria that can damage them. So in fact, these get burnt out, and like batteries, they wear down and need to be replaced approximately every 100 days. Mitochondria, this is really important, use over 90% of the oxygen we breathe. Every time we take a breath, 90% of that oxygen is delivered to our mitochondria. The reason why, if you hold your breath, or if you're deprived of oxygen, or something happens, you don't get oxygen, things go badly very quickly, and you die pretty soon, is because the mitochondria can't get oxygen. When the mitochondria can't get oxygen, we simply stop living, after a few minutes, or not very long. But even before that, then there can be problems. So ultimately, mitochondria are big users of oxygen. That's almost the whole point of breathing. Okay, so understanding the huge importance and fundamental importance of mitochondria, you can probably also understand that when mitochondria aren't working as well as they should be, then it's really problematic. It can be an underlying factor or contributing factor to essentially any condition, and especially chronic diseases. So diseases associated, with aging, long-term health problems, for example. Absolutely, mitochondrial dysfunction is a major contributing factor to that. So understanding our mitochondria and how we can support them is a really important part, and has been a long overlooked part of overall health that pertains to energy, vitality, longevity, and it also pertains to those two new goals we have of minimizing cellular damage and increasing cellular repair. So keep in mind, let's just see, here we go. So keep in mind, like these mitochondria, as I said, another way to think about them, in addition to engines, batteries, is little digestive systems. What I mean by that is when we take energy in from our food, like I said, we need to convert that from calories in our food to cellular energy, to ATP. So what happens is these little folded membranes is called an electron transport chain. And basically, this is another good way to think of it. Think of it like a waterfall or a dam where water's going down. And as water's going down, turbines are being turned, which is generating electricity. Same thing here. We have energy that comes in. Electrons are tumbling down this electron transport chain, and they are making energy. And when you have electrons bouncing around, you also have free radicals being generated. So there's a double-edged sword process or phenomenon here. When we talk about mitochondria, absolutely, they are vital to our life because they're making energy, but they're also making free radicals, which is damaging. And so the point I'm trying to say is that over time, when we're under stress, if we're exercising a lot, when we're, say, 40 plus, for example, if we're exposed to lots of toxins, our mitochondria can become less efficient, which means they're producing less energy and more free radicals. Think of it like an engine. A well-tuned engine produces lots of power with very little exhaust. It's efficient. But an older or not well-tuned engine will produce less power and more exhaust. And so keeping our mitochondria working well means we're going to have more power, less exhaust, and that exhaust is a major driving factor in cellular damage. So if we're looking at minimizing cellular damage, I'll give a number of steps we can do, but keeping our mitochondria fine-tuned and working well will minimize the cellular damage that comes from free radicals generated in the process of producing energy. So I hope that makes sense. Okay. So let us move on. Okay, so what can we do to improve our mitochondrial function? I'm going to go into details about a few of these steps. This is just a very broad overview. Optimizing maternal DNA. That means picking a good mother. Since you inherit all of your mitochondria from your mom, try to pick a healthy mom if possible. If it's too late for that, then fortunately everything else we have on this list are things we can actually do something about. Decrease our toxin exposure. I won't go into too much detail about that, but essentially toxins are often deleterious or harmful to our mitochondria. It's a big way in which they harm us. So eating organic food to avoid pesticide exposure. Being cognizant of if you are working in an environment with lots of chemicals, for example, or if you have hobbies like that, then you want to take some more steps to either minimize your exposure to those things, use the right protective gear, even air pollution, whatever we can do, have a filter in the house, for example. So decreasing toxin exposure is important. Protecting our cells from free radicals, I'll talk a lot about that. Balancing nutrient intake and absorption, I'll talk about that as well. I will touch on sleep, exercise, as well as inflammation throughout the next little while. Okay, so here are some solutions for mitochondrial decline. And again, we're keeping in perspective that the reason why we're supporting our mitochondria and we are addressing the decline that tends to happen with them over time is to minimize cellular damage. And I'll get to the repair part of things shortly. Okay, so here is our kind of roadmap. I've got 3 steps and then a bonus step, depending on who needs to hear about this. So our 3 steps tonight will be targeted mitochondrial nutrition. So above and beyond a healthy diet, which specific nutrients can we take in that help our mitochondria do their job better? Next is NAD support. What does that mean? Why is it important? This is a very hot topic. I'm sure this drew a lot of people out tonight. Third is anti-inflammatory support. I'll just mention that briefly. And then the bonus step is getting a good night's sleep. And I'll talk about, why that's important, as if, we all know it's important, but there's some new interesting research talking about why. Okay, so let's talk about targeted mitochondrial nutrition. So above and beyond a healthy diet, what do I mean by that? Well, the obvious things we hear, for example, don't have too much high glycemic or refined carbohydrate, white flour, white sugar. Why not? Those bring in a lot of energy, and then the mitochondria have to process that energy, but they're not bringing in a lot of vitamins and minerals that the mitochondria need to do that work. So that encourages the mitochondria to burn out. The reason why I selected this image talking about mitochondrial nutrition is because, first of all, it's colorful. We all hear about eating colorful fruits and vegetables. Color signals polyphenols. That's what gives the color to all of these beautiful foods. And polyphenols usually signal some kind of antioxidant. So the more colorful fruits and vegetables, herbs and spices you can incorporate into your diet, the more antioxidants you're getting in. And when it comes to antioxidants, the more the merrier. So taking steps, making a goal to say maybe include 3 different colored foods or different herbs and spices on a daily basis is a great goal. Again, we're talking about getting in more antioxidants. I'll also talk about some specific nutrients. I already touched on the fact that when we breathe in oxygen, that oxygen is carried ultimately to the mitochondria because we need that oxygen to burn to make cellular energy. But oxygen, as you know, can oxidize. This is where the trouble starts. This is where the double-edged sword thing starts. So everybody has seen this. You cut an apple and immediately or quickly, depending on the type of apple, it will start to brown. So you can see the left side here of the apple is browning. This is oxidation, browning, rusting. This is exactly what oxidation is. And this is happening with the generation of free radicals on the cellular level. We can't see this, but it's the exact same process. So we all know, how do you stop oxidation? How do you stop how do you stop an apple from browning? You squeeze lemon juice on it because the lemon juice is antioxidants and it stops that browning process from happening. Now we can't directly squeeze lemon juice onto our mitochondria, but there are other nutrients that do this job. And so antioxidants help us get the benefits, the energy production from our mitochondria while protecting us from the free radicals. So it helps us get the power and protects us from the exhaust. So like I said, the more antioxidants, the merrier. Really, you can't overdo it with antioxidants, but let's focus on a few, some of which you may have heard, some real shining stars in this department. Coenzyme Q10. I think most people have probably heard of course, coenzyme Q10 and be somewhat familiar with the fact that it has something to do with the mitochondria. Sometimes CoQ10 is called the cellular spark plug. It actually works in that membrane. As electrons are moving along, it will throw and catch electrons as they pass on down the chain to make ATP, and it will act as an antioxidant, a free radical fighter. It will mop up free radicals that are being generated as the electrons are passing around. So that's what makes CoQ10 so important for cellular health. Acetyl L-carnitine, I have a really cool study on that shortly, but this is an amino acid. Carne, as the name implies, comes from meat, is the main source of this amino acid. And it has some unique features. It has antioxidant benefits, but specifically it will take fatty acids and bring them into the mitochondria to be burned for energy. I'll talk about that shortly. Glutathione, also super important. I'll say a few more words about this shortly. It is our body's major antioxidant system. The body actually puts a lot of energy into making glutathione. Any kind of antioxidants you can take in will take the load off the body into from having to always make so much glutathione, because it's getting help from other antioxidants. And as well, superoxide dismutase. This is a type of antioxidant you probably don't hear about as much, but works in the mitochondria, very powerful protector against free radicals. So here's just some examples of like cellular lemon juice or mitochondrial lemon juice to prevent the ROS, stands for reactive oxygen species or free radicals. Okay, so L-carnitine, like I said, this is, this nutrient, this is an amino acid that will take fatty acids. Sometimes we call this the fat bus. Fatty acids will get on L-carnitine, and then L-carnitine will drive them into the mitochondria where they're burned for energy. And so, as you can imagine, people take this for weight loss, for fat burning. And one of my favorite studies of all time that I've ever come across in my career is this one done in Italy, published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. And this study is my favorite because it only included trial participants 100 years of age and older. This was a study done on centenarians, so people between 100 and 106 years of age were included in this trial. They had two groups. Both of them were walking every day. One group got L-carnitine, one group got a placebo. At the end of 12 weeks, the group taking, again, both walking every day, but the group taking L-carnitine had more muscle mass, less fat mass, as well as reductions in both physical and mental fatigue and increase in some aspects of cognitive function. Particularly the acetyl form, acetyl L-carnitine, that will cross the blood-brain barrier to burn fatty acids in the brain, which some people use for example, focus and concentration. There's been studies on it for that purpose, but at any age, and even 100 years of age and older, it is literally never too late to make an improvement in your health. But sometimes, walking's fantastic, but sometimes we need more of these targeted nutrients to do the job that, hey, maybe when we were in our teens and 20s, it was automatic, but now having those extra nutrients really makes a big difference. So I love this study and acetyl L-carnitine for that, muscle building, cognitive function aspect of it. Glutathione, I mentioned, it's a major antioxidant, and yes, the body does make this, but like so many other things, over time, our production of glutathione decreases with age. It is on a downward trend from the 20s onward. And glutathione in particular decreases more rapidly in age in males than females. Women tend to have higher levels of glutathione in general. Men tend to, they decrease their glutathione levels more quickly, and they also tend to be in occupations that use up glutathione. So if you are in an occupation that is toxic, like again, working with chemicals, mining, painting, mechanics, anything, farming even, working with pesticides, anything that's working with lots of toxins and chemicals, what the body does is uses up glutathione for that purpose. There's one area which is that is like a women-dominated area, which tends to be toxic environments, or can be, is a hair and nail salons. Depending on the type of chemicals being used, people working in those environments really absolutely do benefit from more antioxidants and glutathione in particular. But this is a nutrient, like I said, our body makes it, but makes it less so over time. We can get it a little bit from some types of foods, again, that colorful fruits and vegetables. We can get some of the precursor nutrients This is made from 3 different amino acids. So N-acetylcysteine, for example, will help us make this, but we can also get it in supplemental form. So I've mentioned a number of nutrients here: CoQ10, acetyl L-carnitine, glutathione, superoxide dismutase. It sounds like a lot. And so to take the guesswork out of it, there are pre-formulated sort of targeted mitochondrial nutritional support. So for example, Rejuvenate here, it contains the CoQ10, acetyl L-carnitine, the superoxide dismutase from a melon extract, glutathione. Elevate-ATP is an apple and peat extract that's been shown to improve ATP without increasing free radical production. So the idea here is to increase mitochondrial energy, reduce symptoms of fatigue, help improve strength and power, help to maintain cognitive health and brain function, all of this through targeting the mitochondria. This includes the amount of those individual nutrients that are typically used in clinical trials: 1,500 milligrams of L-carnitine, 300 milligrams of CoQ10, 150 of the Elevate-ATP, 100 milligrams of glutathione, 140 of the superoxide dismutase. This mitochondrial energy support formula comes in a powder, 1 scoop, typically in the morning, or you can take it before a workout. And so this is to elevate energy without stimulants. So it doesn't contain caffeine. That's not real energy. It just tricks the brain into making you think that you aren't tired. So it comes in a powder or a capsule form. The capsules have a little bit less CoQ10 because we just simply couldn't fit enough in there without making it like 6 or 8 capsules. But the idea is to take this once per day, typically in the morning, or like I said before, workout, and people will tend to notice the difference within about 2 weeks, and then that can be taken on an ongoing basis. Okay, so that is the idea behind, above and beyond a healthy diet, targeted mitochondrial nutrition. Okay, so the idea here, as I already mentioned, helping to support energy production, antioxidant defense, and ultimately nutritional support for mitochondrial energy production. So you want more power and less exhaust. Okay, so moving on to NAD support. What does this mean? This is a really hot topic. NAD speaks to the part of the equation. So remember when I started, I said we're going to minimize cellular damage and maximize cellular repair. So by supporting mitochondrial energy function, we are minimizing the damage because we're minimizing free radicals. Now, what about the cellular repair? So it turns out that the body has some amazing cellular repair mechanisms. So cellular damage is happening in our bodies every day throughout our life, more so if we're exercising a lot, more so when we're under stress, more so when we're exposed to toxins. But when we're in our teens, 20s, even 30s, we have these amazing cellular repair mechanisms that are constantly fixing damage that's happening. Over time, those repair mechanisms start to slow down. They don't work as well as they once did. And so this is what causes more damage to accumulate. Remember that definition of aging, time-dependent accumulation of cellular damage. So researchers started to look into this, like what are these mechanisms and why do they work less efficiently over time? Why aren't we repairing our cells as well as we once did? It turns out that, like everything in the body, this cellular repair happens due to enzymes. There's a whole host of enzymes that do these repair processes. And most of those enzymes, many of them, are dependent on this molecule called NAD. This stands for nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. So this is NAD here. I didn't want anybody's eyes to glaze over looking at this big molecule. But ultimately, like I said, these repair enzymes need NAD to take the right shape to do their repair. But NAD levels start to drop off. By the time we're in our 40s, we have about half the amount of NAD in our body that we did in our 20s. And so our repair enzymes simply can't do the work that they would normally do, like cell survival, age-related cell maintenance, and DNA repair. And so this decline in NAD levels really seems to drive the aging process. So it is a major factor that is driving and accelerating the aging process because we're unable to repair our cells the way we once did. So once researchers realized that, and anybody who's been following the work, for example, of Dr. David Sinclair out of Harvard, and I'm sure that many people on the webinar tonight are familiar with him. He did a lot of the cutting edge research around NAD levels. The next logical question becomes, well, then how do we get NAD levels back up? How do we get that back up so our cells can start doing that all important repair work? And there are a few ways. So 3 ways. Here are 3 ways to improve your NAD levels. Now, this is also very conveniently will support your mitochondrial function, but here we're focusing on how to get our NAD level. Okay, 1, exercise. Any kind of exercise is important. Absolutely, being sedentary will decrease your NAD levels even more. But specifically strength training exercises, so maintaining your muscle mass, push-ups, sit-ups, anything that builds your muscles. First of all, building muscle mass makes you make more mitochondria, so that's nice. But specifically exercise will help elevate your NAD level. So that's step 1. Everybody needs to be exercising. The next one is diet. Same things, very conveniently, that I've already mentioned in terms of, not too much refined carbohydrate, lots of colorful fruits and vegetables, lots of antioxidants. But in terms of diet, there's also a lot of research around caloric restriction and intermittent fasting. As a matter of fact, the reason why some of those practices have been touted as anti-aging practices, specifically the intermittent fasting, once you've gone about 12 hours without eating, your body starts to produce NAD. I guess your body's thinking, oh, we might be in a famine situation here. Let's get into survival mode, and somehow it sort of ratchets up or turns up this cellular repair action. So NAD levels come up through that. Now, we would have to spend a whole evening, and intermittent fasting is something that you shouldn't just necessarily plunge into. It works differently for men and women, for example. Some people can go longer than others without eating. It is something to do very carefully, and to do a lot of research or work with a professional about it. But just know that this is something else that can elevate your NAD levels. The third thing is something called NAD boosters. So this is compounds that will increase your NAD production. And there are a few of these, but one that has come into the spotlight recently is something called nicotinamide mononucleotide, or NMN. This is a biologically active form of vitamin B3. You can find this in foods like edamame, cucumbers, broccoli, for example. And NMN plays a key role in supporting cellular energy metabolism. It does work in the mitochondria, but specifically, NMN is converted in the body to NAD. So this is what's called an NAD booster or an NAD elevator. Other forms of vitamin B3, like niacin, for example, aren't converted to NAD to the extent that this is, or really much at all. They do kind of different things. So this is really interesting. And this is, again, a lot of this research out of Harvard has been focusing on NMN as a way to elevate your NAD levels. So NMN is newly available in Canada as of December of this past year, 2022. So you're seeing probably more about this. Previously, people were ordering it online from the States and from different areas. You can now get it in Canada. So NMN Surge, for example, is 150 milligrams of this form of vitamin B3 that's been shown to elevate NAD levels. Clinical trials have shown that taking 300 milligrams, so that would be the equivalent of 2 capsules here, of NMN for a 1-month period of time, or 12 weeks, will elevate NAD levels by 60%. Here, I know there's a lot of information on this slide here, but this is just sort of a look. There's a lot of animal research, and there's a actually really great website you can check out called nmn.com. Pretty simple, nmn.com. A lot of really fascinating research. Some of the clinical trial that's being done, for example, postmenopausal women 55 years or older, taking 300 milligrams of NMN. So again, it would be like those 2 capsules for 8 weeks. Improvements in a number of blood sugar markers, improvements in adiponectin. This is a hormone produced by fat cells that helps you maintain a set point weight. So you only get to a certain weight, and then your fat cells produce adiponectin, which stops you from gaining more weight. So it's a way that the body regulates itself. Interesting study, older adults age 72. For these people, when they took their NMN in the evening between 6 p.m. and bedtime, improvements in sleep, duration, as well as decreased sleep disturbances. So a number of interesting results in terms of clinical trials for NMN, and safety studies have shown that it is something safe, which is why it was introduced to the market in Canada. So typically, again, 250 to 300 milligrams, the equivalent of 2 capsules of NMN, is the result or the amount used in clinical trials. Okay, so I'm just going to say a few words about inflammation, because when we're talking about minimizing cellular damage, you absolutely have to talk about minimizing inflammation. Fortunately, everything we have talked about so far will help with that. But specifically, when we're talking about nutritional steps for balancing inflammation, you can't beat omega-3 essential fatty acids. So do an oil change in your diet, out with the omega-6 that comes from, say, like the processed oils, seed oils, canola, corn oil, those kinds of things. And in with more healthy fats, things like olive oil, coconut oil, avocados, but specifically the omega-3s that you can get from fish, for example, really, really important for maintaining a balance of inflammation and keeping inflammation in check in the body, because that is something that will accelerate cellular damage. And it's something that becomes more common, again, over time with stress and if we've been exercising. So I'll show you here. There's a kit here for people who are interested in mitochondrial energy formula, NMN, for example, as well as omega-3s. There's this Rejuvenate Longevity Wellness Optimization Kit that includes these packets, a 30-day supply, so 30 packets that has a full dose, 2 NMN, 4 of the capsules, 1 omega-3 ultra strength with D, as well as quercetin lipomycel, which is an antioxidant and blood vessel protectant. That's a 1-a-day package for people who it's less expensive, more cost effective, and convenient for people to be taking this once per day. Okay, so let us move on to the bonus step for mitochondrial support. I don't think in this forum, I can do a show of hands, but basically, I know a lot of people aren't sleeping, so I'll say a few things about the importance of sleep. I don't think anybody who's not sleeping well doesn't want to sleep better, but there's some really interesting news about, I don't think we have to talk about the benefits of sleep and how great it is for us. But there's some interesting new information about the benefits of deep sleep. So when we sleep, we have different stages of sleep. So this is a schematic that shows us up here at the very top is awake. And at the beginning of the night, or in our first couple of hours of sleep, or first few sleep cycles, as you know, we sleep in roughly 90-minute to 2-hour cycles that have a balance of deep and light sleep, and that changes as the night goes on. So we start by going awake, and we pretty much go usually pretty quickly into very deep sleep. So this deep non-dreaming or non-REM sleep, we do a lot of that in the first 2 or 3 sleep cycles. So the beginning of the night, let's say if you're going to bed at 10 o'clock, between 10 and maybe 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, you're doing a lot of this deep non-dreaming sleep. And then as the night goes on, you spend less time in that deep sleep and more time in REM, rapid eye movement, or dreaming sleep. So we know with dream sleep, this is when we consolidate memories, process emotions, learn things, forget things that we don't need to remember. But what was happening in the deep sleep was a bit of a mystery until recently. We have learned that during deep sleep, there is a circulatory system in the brain that only activates during this time. The cerebral spinal fluid circulatory system in the brain at this time will turn on and essentially flush out the brain. You clean your brain when you're in deep sleep. So this is a majorly important and newly recognized aspect of deep sleep, and why, I don't know if you ever heard the old saying that an hour of sleep before bedtime is worth an hour of sleep, an hour of sleep before midnight is worth 2 hours after midnight. This is a very old saying, but maybe it's based on this, because in the early parts of the night, you are cleaning your brain. When you aren't sleeping well, you aren't getting that deep sleep, you're under stress, you have high blood pressure or high levels of alcohol, that waste accumulation does not get cleared out, and that brain cleaning doesn't happen. So we need proper vascular health, exercise. Alcohol inhibits the circulation, so avoiding that, especially late in the day. And yeah, you clean your brain when you're in deep sleep. Pretty neat. So I'll just speak briefly then about, in terms of sleep, I think everybody's heard of melatonin. This is the famous sleep hormone that is stimulated by darkness, which is why it's important to sleep in a dark room, blackout curtains or a sleep mask if possible. And the more time you spend in the darkness, the more your body will produce melatonin. So in fact, see my little graph on the right here, the pineal gland in the brain starts producing melatonin in the evening. Cortisol levels should be coming down, melatonin levels start coming up, and this eventually will make us sleepy by whatever time you go to bed. But melatonin levels peak sometime in the middle of the night, between 2, 3, 4, 5 in the morning, and 3 to 5 or 3 to 6, our melatonin levels are highest. That's why we dream more at that time of night. Melatonin causes dreaming. It's a lighter phase of sleep. That's why you often wake up from a dream at the end of the night, and then those start to decline. Really important thing to do when you wake up in the morning: turn the lights on right away, open the blinds, try to look at some sun. That will shut down your melatonin. That says to the body, it's daytime. That helps to set your circadian rhythm or your day-night rhythm. So that's just a little bit about melatonin. Sleep in a dark room at night. Look at light as soon as you can in the morning. That helps with melatonin production and setting your daily rhythm. We do know we make less melatonin with age, which is why people do tend to sleep less with night. Here are some of the sleep hygiene tips. In addition to sleeping in a dark room, try to sleep and wake at the same time every day, if possible, and try to avoid screens near bedtime. Though that blue light, as you've probably heard from screens, really hard on your melatonin. Now, another thing that's important about melatonin is it happens to be a fantastic antioxidant. Funny that, but that's exactly what it does. Melatonin works it does a few things, but it works in the mitochondria. It will scavenge free radicals. It will help ultimately improve ATP production. This is one of the reasons that sleep helps to restore our energy. We're making ATP during our sleep, and melatonin is helping with this process. So it's doing lots of interesting things for us. And it is worth doing whatever we can. So all those steps I told you about, maintaining your circadian rhythm, sleeping in a dark room, exercise, all of these things to help optimize your melatonin production. If you find that you're not sleeping well, for some people, not everybody, but some people do respond well to melatonin supplements. Some people, they find it gives them headaches or weird dreams, or they feel too groggy the next day. And if that's the case, melatonin might not be for you. You can find lots of other non-melatonin sleep support. Sometimes it's a matter of trying to find a dose. Melatonin can work for people in doses as small as 0.5 milligram to his doses as high as 10 milligrams or more. I knew one very large individual who took 50 milligrams of melatonin, which should be enough to knock out a horse, but for some reason, that was just what worked for him. Anyway, most people would be between, well, 1 to 3, 6 is a common dose, up to 10, anywhere between 1 and 10 milligrams of melatonin. The nice thing about melatonin is you don't have to take it every single night. I mean, it's nice to set your circadian rhythm if you do that. And you know you're at the right dose of melatonin if you are waking up feeling rested and refreshed. And that feeling should kind of like you had a good night's sleep, should more or less stick with you throughout the day. You should sort of notice the difference on that. If you're feeling too groggy, then back off the dose. And if you're even at a very small dose and not feeling rested and refreshed, then maybe melatonin doesn't work for you or it's not right for you. So when it comes to melatonin, lots of different options. Just quickly mentioning a new one. This is a high dose, 10 milligrams, although the tablets, can be broken in half. It's a tri-layer tablet, so you get half of the melatonin released immediately, as well as other ingredients to help sleep. L-theanine helps calm down a busy brain. Sleep botanicals as well. This one, by the way, has valerian in it, so it may have a strong scent, a strong odor. But valerian is a time-tested herb for sleep. And then you get a gradual release of the rest of the melatonin because you want that later in the night when your body would normally be producing that. So just in terms of a new option for a higher potency sleep support, but like I said, there's lots of different options for both melatonin and melatonin-free sleep support because now you know that you need to sleep well to clean your brain. So, okay, I think that brings us up to time. It does, that's 45 minutes. I feel like I went a little bit quickly to make up for the late start, but let's see what we have got here in terms of questions. There seems to be, there's already, where are we? Start from the top or the bottom? Okay, the top. Oh, okay, this is a great question. Great. The first comment is an excellent comment that I should have mentioned before, but I absolutely will do now. Public service announcement. Please address the need to supplement with CoQ10 when on statin. So yes, very important. Coenzyme Q10 is a nutrient that we do make to a certain extent in our bodies, again, less over time. But for people who are taking statin type cholesterol lowering medications, that will interfere with your ability to make CoQ10. So taking CoQ10 is really important for people who are taking statin cholesterol lowering medications. Question here, yes. So I think we already talked about sleep. Yeah, this question was already addressed. I think that's sleeping. So the question here is, does sleep with the aid of sleeping pills count for targeted mitochondrial solutions? I would say that yes, it does, depending on the sleeping pills. So certain types of prescription sleep medications or over-the-counter sleep medications can interfere with the normal sleep cycles, the deep and the light sleep. So as long as the sleep aid that you're using is something that is helping you maintain that deep and light sleep, most of the natural solutions do help with maintaining your proper sleep cycles, then yes, in that case, sleeping with the aid of a sleeping pill, as we could call it, or natural sleep support, helps with targeted mitochondrial support. Question, is there a bad time to take Rejuvenate, like late in the afternoon? Will it affect sleep? So it won't affect sleep for most people. Some people are sensitive, but I personally have taken it in the afternoon when I feel like I'm hitting that kind of mid-afternoon slump, has not had an issue with sleep. So it's sort of we generally recommend for that to be taken in the morning, but for the most part, it won't interfere with sleep as long as you're not taking it maybe right before bed. Question here. Oh, this is an excellent question about CoQ10. Ubiquinol versus CoQ10. Good. So remember how I said that CoQ10 works in the mitochondria and it throws and catches electrons as it passes them down the electron transport chain. So CoQ10 exists in two forms. in nature. It has a slightly different form depending on whether it's throwing an electron or catching an electron. And so these different forms are called ubiquinone or ubiquinol. You can get these in supplements. Ubiquinol is considered to be a slightly better free radical cleaner-upper than ubiquinone, but it's also a little bit more expensive. So a lot of research has been done on standard CoQ10, which is standard ubiquinone, and shown benefits. Newer research shows that ubiquinol is somewhat more effective, but like I said, it's also somewhat more expensive. So in terms of it's better to take ubiquinol or ubiquinone, if budget is not a concern, if you have an unlimited budget for supplements then take ubiquinol. But everybody else, or for people who are on budgetary concern, you know what, ubiquinone still does an excellent job, and the body will convert back and forth. It will take your ubiquinone and ubiquinol, convert them back and forth. So hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so there's lots more questions here than I realized. This is probably the single most common question I get asked: is long-term use of melatonin safe? Yes, it is. Question here, when you refer to stress, is that physical stress or emotional, psychological, mental stress? All of them. Or do all of these have more or less the same effect on mitochondria? Absolutely. Yes, any stress. I mean, life would be boring if we had absolutely no stress at all, but emotional, psychological, mental, and physical stress all affect our mitochondria. Let's see, what do you think of MCT oil and how MCT affects mitochondria? Okay, so yeah, this is a good question. I haven't heard of the Stephen Gundry's MCT wellness. Unfortunately, I know there's lots of MCT products out there. MCT oil is a type of healthy fat that we will burn very efficiently for energy, and it is one that will help promote ketosis. So for people who are following ketogenic diets, for example, MCTs can help get you into ketosis more quickly, which can be beneficial for mitochondrial function. It's an individual, depends on the individual with that. But question from Elizabeth, can you take too many supplements? You sure can. That it is possible to take too many supplements. But it depends on, I think what I see is sometimes I see people buying things like, up until recently, for example, and there's still some on the market, literally, guys, NMN being sold for $2,000 a bottle. Maybe that question there is taking supplements that are too expensive or aren't living up to the hype. Be very cautious of anything that you buy online. Anything that's not, buy online from the US or from other parts of the world. Buying online from Healthy Planet, sold in Canada according to Canadian regulations, completely fine. But there's all these things that you see online that sound fantastic and they're super expensive, so they must be great. Be very cautious about that. What supplements or vitamins do you recommend to take daily? That really, it's not a question I can answer briefly because it varies so much depending on individuals, their age and stage of life. Definitely an omega-3 and either a multivitamin or a B complex, depending on the individual in terms of a foundation. Most people benefit as well from a good quality probiotic, and then mitochondrial support. Certainly that's what I take on a daily basis. But it really depends on the individual. Any recommendations for toxicity from dental conditions, work heavy metal toxicity or root canals? So again, if you feel if the toxin exposure that you have is coming from inside your body somewhere, like your dental amalgams, for example, then things like glutathione, like I mentioned, which helps protect us, are even more important. I can't speak to whether implants are safer than root canals because I'm not an expert in that department, although I'm not a huge fan of root canals. Can be certainly problematic. They can leave infection in the body. How often should you take NMN? You can take NMN long-term. Yes, so the clinical trials typically run from about 8 to 12 weeks, just because, you know, they want to show some results and publish them quickly. That's not to say that it is unsafe to take it long-term. There's no information to suggest that NMN is unsafe long-term. But the clinical trials just typically go for a certain period of time. That's where those timeframes come from. Does the liquid glutathione work faster than the capsule? Which one gets absorbed better? It really depends more. It's less on liquid and capsule than the form. Like you can, for example, get encapsulated glutathione in a liposome or a micelle in a capsule or a liquid. That's not ultimately the deciding factor for the glutathione. Okay. Here we go. Supplements for early dementia. Well, we want to keep our, say, mild cognitive impairment, those kinds of things. EFA would be the number one. And mitochondrial support, the ones that I already mentioned. Okay, I think that brings us up to, we still have time for a few more questions. We started a little bit late, so let's keep going. Okay, that's all the questions in the Q&A. So I'm going to go over to the chat area. Oh, okay. There's a lot. Okay, hold on. Let me just scroll through the chat here. My chat is stuck. Why isn't it scrolling? Here we go. See if I can. Oh, that's people from all over. Too much exhaust makes me feel exhausted. I love that. I apologize, I missed the start of the webinar. Everybody missed the start of the webinar because we started a little bit late. What time should you, when should you start taking CoQ10? Somebody at 45 to 50 years. Yep, that is a great time. I've taken CoQ10 since 38. Okay, I'm just scrolling down. Okay, I think that the chat looks like it's to be mostly chat, and the Q&A was in the Q&A. You guys are great because you put the for the most part all the questions in the Q&A. Let's see here. Melatonin works for me. Can I take it long term? Yes. Is there dependence with valerian? No. Do I have a practice in Toronto? No, I'm sorry. Light when you first wake up, does that include a computer screen? It probably does. I don't think the body knows the difference. Sometimes if it's lately, right, it's been so overcast and the sun's still barely up, yes, I'll use the phone and stare into that light for a few minutes. Mitochondria produces energy, but what form, what kind of energy? So in case I wasn't clear about that, our cellular energy is called ATP. That's what energizes us, this ATP made from electrons, adenosine triphosphate. Interesting fact, as we use up ATP, as we use up adenosine triphosphate, the phosphate gets broken off and we just left with the adenosine. As adenosine builds up in our body, that's what makes us tired. That's what makes us feel sleepy. We sleep, we clear out the adenosine, it gets turned back into ATP, adenosine triphosphate, and we have energy again. When you drink coffee, it blocks the receptors for adenosine. So you're still tired, the adenosine's still around there, but you can't feel it as much. That's why coffee makes you feel more awake, because you're blocking the feeling of tiredness, because you're blocking your adenosine receptors. So hopefully that explains more. If it wasn't clear about cellular energy, the ATP, that's what that is. Speak about the oxidation issue with omega-3 fish oil products. And natural factors, yes. So with omega-3s, quality, purity, and potency. So you're making sure you're getting enough of the omega-3s in your capsule and that the omega-3s are not damaged, they're not oxidized. And so testing is super important. There's a couple of testing, this one here, Ishura, when you see that on the label, you know that above and beyond strict Canadian guidelines, it's been tested to make sure that the end of the expiry date, the fish oils are not oxidized. They sometimes have vitamin E added, usually when they're in the soft gels as well, that protects them. That's really important. Can we OD on CoQ10? That's a good question. Studies have used CoQ10 in for things like Parkinson's in very high amounts. 1,600 milligrams per day would be very expensive. And it was, safe and effective. That's not to say the average person needs to take that much CoQ10 or that more is always better. So it's very safe. It would be really expensive to try to overdose on it. For people with neurological conditions, yes, they're going to be taking 1,200 or 1,600 milligrams per day. But for the average person, 300 to maybe at the outside 600 milligrams a day of CoQ10 would be fine. Is taking trazodone for sleep harmful to sleep cycles? It may be interrupting the amount of deep and light sleep. That's one thing that may be concerning for some types of, say, over-the-counter and prescription sleep aids. Let's see here. Okay, we'll just do, hold on one second. Okay, we'll just do another question. Oh, hold on, here we go. Okay, just do another question here and then we'll wrap up. There's some little chit-chatty. Will CoQ10 reduce night sweats? I have not heard that about CoQ10. And I think that's it. I think the rest of it is more chat. So I think we have all the questions here. Okay, thanks everyone for your engagement and your kind feedback. I know it was a lot of information in a short period of time. So hopefully that was practical news you can use. Last question here. Would this be good for leaky gut? I'm not sure exactly what in specific. The things we were addressing weren't necessarily targeting leaky gut per se, but hopefully the rest of the information is been practical, helpful information. Thanks for the kind feedback. And if you have any further questions, feel free to reach out to thanks, lots of comments coming in to the organizers. And thanks everyone. Take care. Appreciate the questions and engagement, and have a great night.